Welcome to Expedition Networking, a special segment of the Networking RX podcast. I'm Frank Agan, founder and president of AmSpirit Business Connections, and your host for this program. For those of you who are familiar, on the Networking RX podcast, we share information and have conversations with experts, such as authors, researchers, and social scientists. And all of these programs are aimed at helping you learn how to become better at building professional relationships and understanding why they work. In this Expedition Networking segment, however, we're going to bring on successful entrepreneurs and unique professionals and explore their networking adventure and learn how they used relationships to create lasting success. Today on Expedition Networking, we have Rachel Gogos. Rachel, she is the founder and CEO of BrandiD, and that's an agency that helps build your brand and business on the web by aligning your profession with your soul work. I'm sure she's going to tell us all about that. She is a former editor at the Wall Street Journal and the United Nations. And she's the author of a book, Build Your Brand, The Soul-Based Guide to Digital Marketing. Easy for me to say. Rachel, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Frank. So good to see you.
Well, Wall Street Journal, United Nations. But was this? Did you lose a bet? Have to talk to me? Is that what it is?
No, not at all. Gosh, that was a while ago. But
go to confession, and this is the penance, right?
I mentioned those things in my bio only because when you look at one's life, when you're going through your life, you never realize how much the experiences you're having, right? Especially when you're younger, are going to impact you later in life. And both those roles actually helped me so much in my work at BrandiD.
Yeah, it's interesting because college is really designed for going and getting a job. Mm-hmm. And they hold up the Wall Street Journal, and everyone kind of, oh, wow, that would be great. If I do well, I could get a job there. Or the big firms, the big law firms, whatever it might be. And then you get in there and you're kind of like, this is a nice start, but now you've got your own business and I know there's still frustrations, but you have more control over it.
So. Some days. But you know what? You just said something that made me think of a story that applies to the theme of this podcast, which is you mentioned you do well in college and you might get a job at a brand company, right? Whatever that brand is. But for me, the Wall Street Journal was actually truly networking. When I went to college, I worked at the college newspaper, and we had a really serious publication. I went to SUNY Buffalo, UB. And I had become the editor of the campus section, which was like the news desk, right, of the campus publication. And one of the people that also worked at the school paper with me is still to this day the head of the editorial board at the Wall Street Journal. His name is Jason Riley. So Jason and I took two different paths after college. He went to the Wall Street Journal soon after college and really has gone up in the ranks because now that's, we graduated college in 92. That's been a long time. He's still there. And I went to New York City. I went to graduate school in education. I worked at the UN for 3 years, and I was really missing journalism because I just had such a deep passion for journalism, like old style journalism, not like journalism of today.
Yeah, I get it. I totally get it.
And Jason and I reconnected, and he said, there's an entry level job here. Why don't you apply for it? I'll put a good word in for you. And that's how I got into the Wall Street Journal.
I think that's a great story. I think so often people looking for jobs just fire out resumes and, having that contact. And you may not have the contact, but you might know somebody who knows somebody.
Exactly. Exactly.
And so it could still work for you. Just, you can fire out 8,000 resumes, or you can fire out 8 and work your contacts. I mean,
right.
I don't know if you're going to end up in the same place, but one's a heck of a lot more work and a heck of a lot more heartache of not hearing back from people. And
oh yeah, it's hard to make an impression. Actually, this you're like taking me on a trip in my mind through memory lane. Every single job I held before starting my business was from networking. Every single one. And again, I share this just to encourage people who are job hunting. There were oftentimes jobs were created for me and my skill set, even though there wasn't an opening. And that was because when I started working there in whatever capacity, and then, applied my actual true talents and skills, that leader, whoever it was, saw a need for what I was doing and then retrofitted, literally writing job descriptions, getting budget approved to then hire me in that role. So
I think that's a great lesson, because often when I talk to people, when you go to the job message board, big company, Honeywell, you might see something that doesn't fit me, or I don't see what fits me, or I don't see anything that fits me. It's still good to, if you really want to work there, Wall Street Journal is just to kind of make connections, because so many things don't get posted.
Right. Exactly.
Or they see talent and they're like, you know what, we need to grab talent while we can. So let's talk about BrandiD, how you Wall Street, the United Nations, then the Wall Street Journal, and this journey of creating this business.
Yeah, so I would say my biggest inspiration for the BrandiD was I am the daughter of 2 Greek immigrant parents. And I always share, if you've seen my big fat Greek wedding, that very much mirrors aspects of my life. But I grew up in a very entrepreneurial family. My dad was definitely a restaurant owner. So I was working there from a very young age. But what that also taught me was exactly what I needed to do to run any type of business. And the other thing I learned at the restaurant, and we actually have a second one, was customer service, which again, super helpful skill no matter what you do.
Yeah.
So I'd been bitten by the entrepreneurial bug at a very young age. And even though I took then a traditional route through certain parts of my life, I did start a business while I was working at the Wall Street Journal with 2 other friends. And I was literally working around the clock for about 10 or 11 months. And I was living in New York City. We had started an internet incubator, and that was in, I think, the late 90s, early 2000s, when the internet was just becoming a thing and getting hot. So the 3 of us came together and just kind of combined our skills. One of my partners was a web designer and a graphic designer. And that was my first and really only experience of working at an agency, was, this agency of the 2 of us. I was the salesperson and the marketing person and the copywriter, and he was the web guy. So we were going door to door trying to sell our services to traditional brick and mortar businesses, saying, hey, do you need a website? And that was the only agency I've ever worked at. So fast forward, I had some other experiences in my life, work experiences, including internet consulting. And I had a few more marketing roles in my career. And my husband read an article in Time magazine about this concept of personal branding. And it talked about a gentleman in particular who was one of the gurus of personal branding and the pioneers, William Arruda. And he started a company called Reach. And they were offering a certification program in personal branding. And I was working in a traditional setting at that time as a VP of marketing. And my husband said, you read this article. This sounds like something you would love, because it's all about marketing and people. And you love digging stories out of people and you love marketing. So it's such a combination of your skills. So I held on to that article for a couple of years, started having children, and decided to enroll in that certification program after some soul searching. And I went back to that business partner where we were going kind of door to door on the business, on the Upper East Side, trying to sell our web services, and said, why don't we start BrandiD together? And he said, you don't really need me to start BrandiD. You've got the personal brand certification. You could do it on your own. And I remember saying to him, no, I really need you, because I want people to have something tangible after they go through a personal brand program. So he said, start it on your own, but I'll be your web person, and that's exactly what I did. So it was the two of us the first couple of years, and I would do the personal brand strategy and help people figure out what they wanted to do next and how to position themselves online. And then if they were interested or needed a website, we would then build them a website, and I would do all the copywriting and be the project manager and help them create a presence on the web. And so that was 13 years ago, and BrandiD is still going strong. And we've actually built the business on through network, really through referral. It's been all referral business and organic traffic, and a few partnerships referring business to us besides repeat clients.
Now, is that web designer still involved?
Occasionally, actually, we just got a project now that's a perfect fit for him. It requires some product branding a new product, and then creating a labeling system, because this product line has 40 different products within it. So he's going to work on that project with me.
Okay, well,
he designed the BrandiD logo too. So,
well, this is just a total aside, but he did you a real favor years ago when he said, "Hey, do it on your own." I used to be an attorney and help people get into business, and I don't know how many times I would get two people coming to me to get into business, because the one person who's the driving force and really has everything they need except the courage to do it on their own, and so they grab hold of the buddy who's got no money, got no time, got no drive, he's just got a man cave with a beer cooler and, willing to talk about things. And so they get into business together, and 3 or 4 years down the line, you metaphorically wake up and realize, oh my God, this person I'm in business with, I don't need them. And then you have to unwrap all of that, and that just becomes a mess, because in their mind, they've been more important and it's more valuable than it really is. And you end up having to pay for it twice, because you've built it with them and you've put all the work in, all the effort, and then you're going to have to basically pay for half of all your work and all your effort. So kudos to your former non-partner. I think that's really cool.
Yeah. And he created an amazing business actually on his own. He too, since we had that conversation, but we're always looking for opportunities to collaborate. But I definitely know what you mean about the one always doing the work. So
yeah, well,
that wasn't our case. We always had a great partnership, but we had a third partner when we started the business in New York. He was the one who wasn't holding up.
There's always somebody. There's always
totally.
somebody. And I can think of any number of cases of people just, hey, let's go into business together. Let's write a book together. Let's do this. And you just have to. My friend says the best partner is no partner. At what point did you realize, we've been talking networking. This is a podcast about networking. At what point did you realize, hey, this relationship thing really matters? You've mentioned, talking to the person you knew from college, and he was at the Wall Street Journal. And I think when we come across those sorts of points in our life, it's just like, oh, that was luck, but and perhaps it was, but it is networking. And then you start to realize that, hey, this is kind of repeatable. Mm-hmm. Was there a point where you're like, hey, you know what? I need to stop knocking on doors to find my opportunities. Do you know when that might be?
I think I'm actually just a natural networker. It's just in my nature. I love people, and I'm really curious about them. I am a little bit of an introvert, but what was eye-opening for me was realizing that not everybody has the same skill that I do. And so when I meet people and talk to them or network, it's always truly coming from a place that's sincere and authentic. It's not because somebody is so-and-so and I want to make an inroad. Right. And again, it's such an innate skill for me that I didn't realize it is a skill and a strength. But I did realize that, I think when I would say maybe the early years of BrandiD, where once again, I really relied on my network to build my business, but it wasn't some strategic move. It just was so natural for me. And then as I started to grow the business and really paused and looked at how it was growing very organically, I realized, not everybody does this innately. So I'm really grateful that that's more of an innate skill for me. And I know there's some people that are really super networkers. I wouldn't consider myself some super networker, but I feel like the part of it that's just innate and authentic has helped me tremendously.
That's a good thing to recognize. I didn't start like that, but I ultimately became that. And I'm like you. I have this natural curiosity. My wife and I have season tickets to the professional soccer team in Columbus, and I just have this. The two guys sit behind us every game, and it's like I gotta get to know these guys. What's their story? Everybody in that stadium's got a story, but these guys are always there. I'm going to find out their story, and I just that's just not my wife, right? Just my my kids are kind of like that. They won't admit it, but I think that's really cool. What kind of advice would you give a younger version of yourself? Rachel back in high school. Or early college.
Oh, okay. I would say don't worry so much about what you major in, and don't put that pressure on yourself to know exactly what you want to do the rest of your life when you're a freshman in college or a sophomore even, because your life is going to take twists and turns that there's no way you can be aware of it. And you have to be open to kind of following that flow and being self-aware. But again, don't have angst about it or be stressed about it. I see a lot of kids really struggling with that. And it really hangs heavy on my heart, because I think there's a lot of pressure today for young people to know exactly what they want to do. And between technology and how quickly things are changing, and also, this is a real passion of mine, actually, because my master's is in higher education administration, which I learned a lot about student development. I'd wanted to be a dean of students, but we don't prepare kids in high school or college to really know who they are. And how can you pick what you're going to do in your life if you're not super self-aware? And so I would just say to kids, find ways to really know what lights you up, what you're passionate about, what your strengths, like your true strengths are, and follow the crumbs at those, to the path that they lead you on.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really good point. There is this pressure of getting, slotting yourself right from the beginning. You're 17, 18 years old and knowing what it is that, and especially anymore, when I was in high school, I'm a little older than you. You go to the guidance counselor and there were these buckets, right? Metaphorical, you like, how about being a nurse or a teacher or, firefighter, police officer, or an accountant if you like numbers. And that's all they really talked about. And now there's just so many little buckets that you can kind of, like the web wasn't around, SEO wasn't around, all sorts of things that are coming into being, and it gets further and further bifurcated into opportunities for people. And I don't know. Let me throw this at you. Aligning your profession with your soul work. That's in your bio. So I want you to kind of talk about that. Just, when you with BrandiD and building websites, and what does that mean, and how does it manifest itself in your work?
Yeah, that's such a great question. Thank you.
I hope you can answer it, because that's your bio.
I know. Yeah, let me know. I'm teasing. I think actually, let me back up and answer it differently. I've seen a lot of people in my life be really dissatisfied about the career path that they're on. And that has such a domino effect in their personal life as well, right? When they're spending all this time not being very satisfied with what they're doing every day. And I believe that our work should be enjoyable, and it shouldn't be something that we all need a certain amount of money to live and pay for our basic needs. And I am a big believer in doing what you need to do for those needs to be met, right? So like not every job is going to fulfill your soul, but I do believe that at some point we come to a place in our lives where our work should also be fulfilling, even if it's a job that we're doing on the side of whatever it is we're doing to pay the bills.
Right.
And that's what I mean by that is, again, like take the time to know yourself, to know what that type of work is, or where you want to make an impact or leave a legacy in your life, and be able to figure out how to make that a part of your day-to-day life so that you're fulfilled. So again, that domino effect is positive in your life, and that happiness kind of oozes and trickles from you. And I mean, not every day is easy as a business owner.
Sure.
But at the end of the day, I personally feel a sense of freedom because I've made the choice to take this path. And if I can help people figure out how to get from where they are, to where they want to be, on what that type of, and I call it soul work, because I think it's, the stuff that is like always in our back of our mind, or like that business we always wanted to start, or whatever it is, that book we wanted to write. Not everybody's cut out to start their own business, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or like, what can you do in your existing day-to-day job to make it more fulfilling? So that's what I mean by aligning your soul with your work, is figuring out what those things are and then figuring out how to make them a part of your day-to-day.
And so that's part of the process then when you work with somebody?
Yes, it is. And we tend to work with business owners, right? They either have a business or they're launching one. But we've often worked with people leaving a role, and they're starting their own business in a space that they've already got a ton of experience in. And yes, so part of our work is, how are you, individual, going to show up in your business brand? And, maybe that's on your about page. Maybe it's like really subtle subliminal things, but how can we help you really be thoughtful and proactive about building your business around what's inspiring you to launch a business?
Okay, good. Okay. And I assume your book, Build Your Brand, the Soul Branded Guide to Digital Marketing, kind of follows that same sort of mindset.
Yeah, it's actually written as a workbook. So there's a lot of exercises in there. So if someone, wants to take this journey on their own, that's a great book for them, because they can just literally like fill in the blanks after they read some of the guided exercises.
Yeah. I think the services you provide, not just you alone, but in general, people doing the work that you're doing is going to be more and more important, because there are, following the COVID lockdown, there are a lot of people who are, and I had this conversation with the guy the other day. He's like, you know what, I got let go. I was doing well, but I just realized I'm totally out of control working for somebody. And the lockdown really did a lot of people favors in, okay, you got to figure it out. Okay, what does that look like? Whereas before the lockdown, when you have a job, it's hard to leave the job. That's a hard thing. You know it. I know it. It's a soul searching conversation with yourself. And I always tell people, if my employer would have just begged a little harder, or just shown a little love, I would have stayed. I'd probably still be there and still be miserable.
Wow.
But when you're kind of forced into the situation, when you're forced into the water, you learn to swim. And that's what's happening with a lot of people. So it's not people sitting at home collecting unemployment. Well, they may be collecting unemployment. That's a whole nother story, but they're starting businesses. And they need to figure these things out, because, being a business owner is, it's a half a day job, right? You just have to pick the 12 hours you're going to work, and, or more, 7 days a week. I guess to wrap up here, how can people help you who are listening to this, and how can they get a hold of you?
Ooh, I like your first part of your question. So help us. Referrals can be sent to thebrandid.com. we have a contact form on our website that actually says, have you been referred by somebody? Anybody who refers business to us actually can earn 10% of whatever the fee of that project ends up being that they refer to us.
Mm-hmm.
And we also have, the other thing I'm looking for is partnerships with companies who serve a similar demographic or audience who need our services. And we've built some low cost products. One is called youronepagewebsite.com.
Okay.
And that's a great product for someone like you just mentioned who needs to kind of put a shingle up on the web and get started, but may not have a lot of money or even time to invest, right?
Mm-hmm.
So youronepagewebsite.com. And best way to reach me, was that the second part of your question?
Yeah. Okay.
I
mean, a place through your website or?
Yeah, absolutely. That same form on our website comes to me as well as a few other people on our team.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, it's some people like to fire their phone number out there. That would freak me out. I don't need my phone number out there. I want people to contact me, just not that easily. Well, I'll get the website in the show notes so people can quickly find it. Most people listen to this driving around, so it's in the show notes. Don't write and drive. Rachel, I really appreciate your time today. This has been a lot of fun.
Thank you, Frank. It's been definitely a lot of fun spending some time with you today.
To wrap things up, remember, we're looking for some enterprising business types to join our team as franchisees of AmSpirit Business Connections. Our franchisees work with entrepreneurs, sales representatives, and professionals in their area to help them become more successful through networking and the exchange of quality business referrals in a structured weekly morning meeting. This is a unique franchise opportunity, you see, because these meetings are in the morning. A successful business type or professional can add this franchise opportunity onto what they're already doing. Again, all of our franchisees do something else. For a couple hours in the morning, a few mornings a week, these franchisees work the AmSpirit Business Connections model. The rest of the time, they're attorneys, accountants, realtors, coaches, and consultants of various kinds. The wonderful thing is that not only do our franchisees realize a financial gain from operating the AmSpirit Business Connections model, but the business networks that they build and develop become a great source of referrals for their primary business as well. Perhaps you know someone, perhaps you are that someone. Whatever the case, to learn more about the AmSpirit Business Connections franchise opportunity, please contact me using the email in the show notes or the one we provide at the end of this program.
Thanks for joining us on the Networking RX podcast. Please put what you've learned into action today and let us know if you have questions, comments, or ideas for future topics. You can email them to us at podcast@amspirit.com. That's AmSpirit.com. Finally, so you never miss an episode, be sure to subscribe to the Networking RX podcast through iTunes, Overcast, or however you receive your podcasts. Now get out and network with someone.
The Networking RX podcast is the copyright production of AmSpirit Business Connection. All rights reserved.